words. So they come up with another one that's been on while this is going on, but they don't know the Bible already talked about them. That's why I showed you in the Bible a moment ago what God said. A Satan motivated government. Look, you just heard Hannity say they lie. The government lies. They lie. So they say, no new taxes. Bush Sr. said, read my lips. And okay. So, taxation. And then the next one, confiscation of personal or private property. Why is that necessary? Because that's the only way to get to the next one, the loss of personal liberty. Private property or personal property, sometimes they're the same. In some societies, they distinguish between them. But whether personal or private property, understand that the real measure of individual wealth is the ownership of personal or private property. And to make that effective, you must have no personal property. They have to rob you of your personal property. You will have nothing. And that's why they come in from the back door and selling the idea that you own nothing but you'll be happy. In fact, some organizations have already bought into it. They're saying they're going to be hiring everything. You own nothing. Your very clothes, the clothes on your back, they're saying you don't have to own them. So in life, you're going to own nothing. They say you own nothing, but you'll be happy. Listen, they began working on this about 2015, planning for 2030. That in 2030, it'll become the way of life. So where nobody owns anything except them who are in control of it. So they say nobody owns anything. So you are dispossessed of personal private property. God is not in support of those things. I want you to know. And that's why he lays claims to Jerusalem. Jesus is coming back to Jerusalem. He says he gave it to Abraham and his seed. And he says Jesus Christ will come back and step in Jerusalem in this earth. He is holding on to a personal property.
Yes, sir.
He's holding on to it.
Yes.
I go through several scriptures to show you. Private property is God's plan. Satan is the one that dispossesses you. And it's all about absolute control. Watch this. We have a short documentary to show you here.
Oh, nothing. And you will be happy.
It's a lie. You are not going to have personal property. That is the plan.
They want you to live in pods and rent and not be able to own anything.
I laugh.
On the trail of the COVID pandemic, the world was awakened to a tidal wave of deceptions, launched forth from the arsenals of its perpetrators, as this became the launch pad from which a carefully concocted dictatorial plot, geared towards the manipulation and total control of mankind and the nation sprung forth. The Great Reset.
What we want to do in Davos this year in this respect is to push the reset button.
He wanted to push the reset button. And just after this talk in 2014, the WEF website was changed with a reset button, making its appearance to the world.
2 years after that conference, the World Economic Forum released a promotional video in November 2016 titled, 8 predictions for the world in 2030. Number 1 on that list of 8 things is captured in this statement. You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Horrible. You own nothing and you'll be happy. Like God doesn't know that? And God chose to give people private property. And he said to Abraham, I'm going to make you rich. Right? God didn't know you would be happier with nothing? Have they forgotten the definition of poverty? So in one breath, they say that they want everybody to have something, and suddenly they come and tell you, no, we'll own everything and you hire from us. So everything you're going to use, you hire from them.
This Great Reset is as serious and as dangerous a threat to our prosperity, to your prosperity and your freedom, as we have faced in decades, with these powerful bodies, including the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and even Prince Charles boasting that within a few short years, yes, their words, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Remember, this is not me saying this is them.
Came across this tweet last week and I thought for sure this was photoshopped. This is posted by James Melville. You can see here the tweet, World Economic Forum, welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. Okay, so this starts off with like, what? You don't own any appliances. You don't own any clothes. You don't have your own house. You don't have your own car. You have nothing. And this is only in a mere 8 years away is what they're kind of predicting. Now, this was, of course, written in 2016, but nonetheless, they're predicting this is coming sooner than later.
The World Economic Forum is now looking to reduce ownership of private vehicles.
So you can't own a house. You can't own a land. You can't own anything. You say that's weird. Well, it's weird because those who are behind this whole thing are psychopaths. They're weird.
The little phrase, and it sounds so innocent, is you will own nothing and you will be happy. Now, if you go back just several hundred years, the founding father and first president of the United States, which was essentially a project founded on the idea of human liberty and freedom, pretty much for the first time in modern history, George Washington said there is no such thing as personal human rights without property ownership. And he said that for several very interesting and important reasons. But the principle is sound. If you are dependent on a greater power for everything, then you are not free. When we talk about collective ownership, we are often told that the great thing about it is that everybody will own. The reality of the thing is that nobody but those in power own. And that impulse to take away private property ownership and to concentrate it into the hands of a representative government is purely Marxist. I mean, it is the heart and soul of the Marxist idea, which stripped down to its basics is nobody owns property, it is collectively owned. And as I say, of course, the fallacy there is that it is not actually collectively owned, it is owned by those in power.
A trip through history's lane reveals how old the attempt to abolish ownership of private property really is. In the 1800s, the German philosopher and father of communism, Karl Marx, is quoted to have said, "The theory of communism may be summed up in one sentence: abolish all private property." Almost 100 years later, this philosophy would lay the foundation for the Chinese communist regime of Chairman Mao Zedong, who implemented the collectivization policy at the expense of millions of lives.
These things are not new. These things that I told you sometime back, what Chairman Mao Zedong of China, what he did when he came up with this policy of the Great Leap Forward. It was some kind of economic revolution like you call it, some form of industrial revolution as well. But it was based on collectivization, okay? And that was to get everybody to give up private property.
The Great Leap Forward was Mao's plan to supercharge China's transformation into a communist utopia by collectivizing and industrializing the country at the same time. But within 2 years, all that collectivization and industrialization led to mass starvation.
So a lot of people gave up their private property. And of course, it was a very brutal regime.
Over 1 million landowners were executed. But from 1953, these land redistributions made Mao fear the reappearance of a class of small landowners. So, on the model of the Soviet kolkhoz, the party persuaded the peasants to combine their plots into collectives of up to 50 families. But the crazy dream became a nightmare and dragged 650 million Chinese people into hell. The country sank into economic chaos, which caused an unprecedented famine. The terrible death toll was around 45 million.
That many people have been gruesomely murdered, killed in China. Nobody's talking about it. It happened in this world. You know, we talk about the terrible things that Hitler did, but Hitler, he didn't kill as many people as Mao Zedong. But nobody's talking about Mao Zedong's brutal, murderous government. I'm saying this for a reason. Today's economic globalists are no different because they're admirers of the Chinese model. They love it. It helped to reduce the population by 45 million. And they have a dream to reduce world population. So what are you going to do? You copy the same thing. You centralize property ownership. You dispossess people. And when the people are dispossessed, they got nothing but all they have is to rely on government. And when they rely on government, you decide who gets what.
This collectivist model, adopted in the 1800s and admired by the global economists of the 21st century, is the backbone for several nefarious agendas being promulgated. Dressed up in different titles, the ultimate plan is to dispossess man and concentrate the world's resources in the hands of a few bureaucratic and technocratic overlords.
At the heart of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Build Back Better, climate change, and the Great Reset is collectivism. As a pioneer of research into plans for global government, G. Edward Griffin explains how collectivism is nothing more than clever marketing to get people to give up their individual rights and for countries to give up their sovereignty to global elites.
Collectivism, as you just said in your introduction, is the underlying general ideology that is common to so many of the totalitarian systems of modern times. Communism, fascism, Nazism, all three of those have as their underpinning certain common elements to an ideology that really, they're the only things that you should be looking at. The names communism, fascism, Nazism, so forth, are just labels, but they don't describe anything. Collectivism is what we're talking about. So what is collectivism? We've been able to identify certain common components. One of them is the idea that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual, if necessary, must be sacrificed for the greater good of the greater number.
In recent times, this horrendous act of dispossession has been effectuated in different nations of the world. As original landowners are being dispossessed of their properties, farmers are being forced to sell off their lands under strict laws and policies that make it difficult for them to hold on to their privately owned properties.
what's going on around the world. You may not even notice what's going on. They're driving away the original owners of lands. They're driving away the farmers, and they use all kinds of methods. They use banners to scare them away and forcibly take their lands. In other occasions, they bring in big money and buy up the properties, okay? And so they're accumulating properties, lands to their friends, because the economies are down and people are hungry, and now they don't have money. What are they going to do? Sell off their lands?
We are concerned about large amounts of land being amassed by wealthy white men.
People on the bottom are giving up land to the people on the top.
They also said that they are raising, I think it's $3 trillion privately and with the help of governments to buy farmland, to buy up 30% of the land, eventually 50% on the entire planet.
Yeah.
And they're talking about 30% by the end of this decade.
So they're predicting the end of private property. This is not a coincidence. And by the way, it's not like a cute little Jetson fantasy. It's not Rosie the robot folding
Correct.
your laundry. Like, these are scary things that they're going, oh, this is going to be great for you. This is not great. And so going through all the different things that we've been talking about, ESG, the purchase of land by private individuals, it is scary how much has been purchased by a small group of people. And as you said, the government is now paying to take some of that farmland out of commission.
What that does to a nation that was built around ownership, that is a total reversal of the basic foundation of America and most of the Western world now.
Another measure by which this deception is perpetuated is through the outrageous spike in the cost of procurement of homes and landed properties in nations around the world to discourage individuals from owning private properties. This further engenders the evil ploy of accumulation and concentration of large swaths of landed properties in the hands of a few individuals.
In fact, in some particular countries and some states in the United States, it's sad that what's happening is they've raised the bar, making it difficult for individuals to buy property and selling those properties to corporate entities, big corporate entities. So the law is getting more difficult for those who want to buy property by themselves and for themselves, and the friends of those who perpetrated this COVID-19 fiasco are taking up the properties.
There are many problems in the modern housing market, but the biggest one for Americans tends to be the price.
Prices rose 40% from the start of the pandemic.
In the final quarter of 2022, the typical U.S. home sold for a record-shattering $468,000. That's unaffordable for most Americans, leaving them to rent.
The housing costs are completely out of line with wages.
Some members of Congress believe Wall Street is a part of the problem.
What's outrageous is your tax dollars are helping Wall Street buy up single-family homes. You're subsidizing Wall Street.
Massive private equity firms like Blackstone and Pradium Partners have backed a relatively new breed of homeowner, the corporation. This growing industry buys or builds single-family homes and then rents them out.
We heard from community organizers that are door knocking in certain neighborhoods and are just surprised by how many of the homes on a particular block will be owned by a corporate landlord.
Look, God is not just doing things on earth without aims and objectives. He's shown us his plan from the scriptures. So it's not supposed to happen now if we pray. And that's why we must pray. And we are praying. And because we are praying, all those things that should not happen now that they're trying to enforce will be delayed. They'll be delayed until their timing. Now, let me explain to you the issue of personal property. For you to know that God is not in support of the dispossession of personal property. He's not for it. Why? Very simple. He lays claims to Jerusalem because he gave it to Abraham and his seed, and commissioned it to Israel, to Jacob, to Israel. He commissioned it to him. That's personal property. And so Jesus comes back, the saints on Jerusalem, and rules the world from there. He sets up his kingdom, his millennial reign from Jerusalem, based on personal property. So that tells you he's not on the same page with them on that. He's not in agreement with them on that. And you have to be smart enough to know where this is going. It's about Satan laying claims to everything. But he sets his eyes. Always look at the end point. Where is it leading? You can't know by just listening to people. You will know from the scriptures. It's the Bible that will teach you. So all that talk about you're going to have nothing, you're going to own nothing, you're going to be happy, don't worry. It wasn't about you. Satan had a plan. It was all about Jerusalem. Now, why is Jerusalem so important? Because he's trying to stop Jesus from coming back. But he's making a mistake. He can't stop the Son of God.
Fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee.